In kind of a nutshell, how would you describe Omnistrate?
Absolutely. Nice to meet you, John. So I would say, if you have to think about Omnistrate, the primary thing is there's so many different ways of distributing your software today, right? So when you think of applications that you've built for different verticals, when you think of applications that you've built for different security paradigms or compliance requirements, distribution challenges obviously start to prop up. But the thing at the end of the day that you need to obviously get to is how do you get your application faster to your customers? How do you get it in their hands quickly? So the focus for Omnistrate has been essentially to build what is called a control plane, what the industry calls a control plane essentially. The control plane is, think of everything that has to do with distribution, everything that has to do with observability, audit logging, everything that has to do with tenant management, especially given multiple customers, use your platform. So that's what Omnistrate does today. We build this control plane as a service.
So if I have an application that isn't necessarily multi-tenant out the gate, how does Omnistrate help?
Absolutely. So what you get, think of a typical development lifecycle, right, for an application. You start with your IDE, especially when you think about Agentic SaaS. Agents today, that's your modern day equivalent for applications, right? So agents today are your modern day microservices. And when you think about all of these microservices, you're just writing the code, you're integrating with LLMs, you're integrating with generative AI. Now, once you have something that's running on your laptop, that's great for this one simple user that's actually literally just you. What Omnistrate does is allows you to then literally go from that piece of code right there to a portal that you can actually then start to serve to your customers. And the thing that's also important here is we build this portal that's ready to get listed on the marketplaces. So AWS Marketplace, for example. So it's FTR ready. There's a bunch of, for example, well-architected reviews that you guys do that we make sure our customers are, conforming to.
Great. Just so I understand, I can go from developing on my laptop to the AWS cloud, to marketplace in a pretty short order without having to create a whole bunch of multi-tenant mechanisms behind the scenes.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So when you think about tenancy right there, think questions about isolation, questions about security, questions about how do you make sure that your customers, if they have strict requirements, especially with enterprises who specifically require your applications to be deployed in their account or tenancy. So how do you ensure all of these things from a GTM or a go-to-market perspective you're not blocked on? That's where Omnistrate comes in and then essentially unblocks those things.
Got it. So you handle tenant onboarding, offboarding, I assume, as well.
Absolutely.
What about cost analytics?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great question. So especially with, if you're thinking about agentic AI, if you're especially thinking about models that you host yourself, think of isolated data or isolated customers. Now, from a cost perspective, we actually ensure, because we control the infrastructure management as well for your application, we have full visibility into exactly the kind of, think of per tenant cost, per service cost, how much are your microservices taking up. And the other big thing that we've seen in our past is, think of environments. You have production, you have pre-prod, developer environments. All of those essentially roll into our cost insight, so we actually can give you real-time insight into if you've over-provisioned something, if you've under-provisioned something. So all of that rolls up into something that's part of Omnistrate.
Am I limited to what kinds of tech stacks I can use or other kind of third-party managed services I can integrate?
No, not at all. So that's the part that we've taken a lot of our learnings in the past. So we built services at AWS, we built services at Confluent. So what we've realized obviously is there's such an explosion of the ecosystem for building SaaS. There's just so many different ways to do it now. And the abstractions obviously are higher and higher. So we don't restrict anyone to choose a particular framework. We don't restrict anyone to follow a particular format. So the way we've architected the entire control plane, it has clear abstractions. It has abstractions for your infrastructure, abstractions for your service management, abstractions for your, think of CI/CD. So all of that plugs into existing tooling. All of that plugs into existing, think of language frameworks, whatever it is, and it just works out of the box.
Got it. So speaking of CI/CD, if I were to use your service, how should I think about that? Do I need third-party CI/CD tools, AWS CI/CD tools? How would that work?
Absolutely. We actually, again, because we are a completely open platform and we build on open interfaces, we support anything. So we can go from code deploy or code pipeline in AWS, or we can even go to third-party SaaS services like GitHub Workflows or Jenkins. So we think of us as more of like a push-based model. You come, you integrate these workflows, you use the language frameworks, you actually use the specifications that you're familiar with, and then we have interfaces that are completely open that you can actually just call into.
Got it. Awesome. So what are some of the kind of bigger customers and workloads that you're operating now?
Absolutely. So we've got, we have a range of workloads that we work with today and customers that we work with today. So we have, really rocket ship startups that are onboarding users almost every day, and databases are being created not just, by humans, but by agents. And so we support such delivery models. And so we also have on the other extreme, we have enterprises that have very strict requirements in terms of, how to isolate their customers, as I was talking about earlier. Especially from an audit and history perspective or compliance perspective. And so we've had customers, for example, DataRobot, who has put together, they have an extensive distribution model today where they actually try to serve multiple customers in multiple different regions, multiple different clouds, multiple different, I would even say, even on-prem. So they lead all the way back into that. So we have think of us as more of like a standardization on top of that. So they have completely leaned into leveraging our platform to do all of those things. And what's given the thing that they've gotten in return is much faster ways to distribute these things, much faster ways to test something, make sure that it doesn't actually break before they go into production. And once it's ready for one deployment model, it just works out of the box for everything else.
Got it. And so what regions do you deploy?
We have no restrictions. So we actually support every single region that AWS supports.
Okay.
And it's out of the box too. And the way we do it also is, we do it in a way that's efficient. So we don't actually stand up infrastructure in regions that you don't need. But the first customer that requests, first customer of yours, basically, that requests a deployment in that region, we automatically bootstrap everything that's necessary on the fly and then get it up and going.
Got it. And you support all the AWS services, Bedrock and Nova models and all those things?
Absolutely, yeah. So in fact, this is where actually some of the enterprise consumption actually starts to come into play. So enterprises have commits with AWS. Enterprises have are essentially bought into AWS, the AWS ecosystem. So they have requirements that you actually try to use as much of AWS as possible, right? And so we allow our service providers to serve such enterprises and allow them to design these, think of applications that can completely be built on top of AWS.
Fantastic. So, one last question I have is like how did you get started on this path? What was the motivating factor?
Absolutely. As I mentioned, so one of the things that, back in 2016 when I started working at AWS actually, and one of the things that we discovered, was one, AWS, given obviously it's literally the first, I would say, frontier for the cloud, right? And then it had years of building on top of the cloud, and then there were a lot of systems in place to actually allow you to build SaaS. But the thing that we also realized is it takes a giant like AWS to actually build those systems in place. And so that's something that became apparent when we left AWS and we started working at Confluent. We built the Confluent Cloud. For Confluent Cloud, the key thing there was, you were building everything from scratch. And the first step, of course, is customers have already expected some sort of, I would say, industry standard in terms of interfaces and delivery mechanisms from AWS.
Right.
And so they need at least parity with that. So Confluent had to build up to that. So we started realizing that this is just not a problem specific to Confluent. This is for every single person that wants to deploy and distribute their software.